Are we buying or are we selling Chris Godwin? He got paid this offseason. We got the news earlier this week that his injury is still kind of lingering a little bit with hopes for him to be ready by week 1. I would expect him to be ready. This is kind of the consistent production that they always put out there for these injured players. But this team did draft Emeka Egbuka in the first round of the NFL draft. So there's some more competition in this room. We already saw Jalen McMillan step up at the end of this past season, had 8 touchdowns through the air, had touchdowns at the beginning of this year, and then towards the end of the season when there were some injuries for the Bucs receiving core. Big question is, are we buying or are we selling? Myself personally, unless I'm a contending team, and you need to really evaluate your roster honestly, unless you're a contending team, I would be selling Chris Godwin. He is 29 years old. Yes, he's got plenty of time. Yes, he was fantastic when he was playing. He moved back to the slot. There's question marks whether he'll stay in the slot. Will he move back out because Cohen was managing that offense? Maybe now Emeka Egbuka slides into that slot role. I think that's a real fear. Emeka Egbuka has consistently played well over his career in crowded wide receiver rooms. Every year at Ohio State, that room was loaded, and he still produced. So I think that we need to be looking towards phasing out Godwin unless you're a competing team. If you're going to be one of those top 3 or 4 teams and you're going to go win the title, I'm fine with it. Keep him. Score your points. Go get that championship. Win the money. All for it. But, Tyler, what are you doing with the Chris Godwin in your leagues?
Yeah, I'm in a very similar stance here. Like you said, this is where you have to be truly honest with yourself. You have to look at your roster and say, okay, do I truly have a chance to win it? Godwin, like you said, last year, he was on a breakneck pace whenever he started. I think he was like the wide receiver 2 until he went down or something. Like, it was insane. And he looked good. Then he got hurt. Like you said, though, the 29 years old, we're starting to get to that point where maybe the age cliff comes, especially when injuries happen. We've seen that happen. They've produced and produced, they get hurt, and they just never really look the same afterwards. I do think this is Mike Evans probably last year as a Buck. I think they already have Jalen McMillan kind of lined up to take his spot. I think that's kind of the same, trying to think of the word, like the phenotype, the same kind of spot. They play the same. So I think they'll end up kind of moving him there. And I think they just took Chris Godwin's replacement here, with Egbuka. I think they play very similarly. And like you said, Egbuka can produce in these crowded rooms. I know they paid Chris Godwin. So maybe they're looking at it as like, look, we're going to just ride Egbuka. He'll be our wide receiver 2 or 3, depending on, target volume and such. But, he'll be there. And then once Godwin is gone, once Evans is gone, he will step up to be, that next target. And so for me, I'll be probably selling Godwin, like you said. I'm a huge fan of Egbuka too. I mean, his film doesn't lie. Like you said, going up against the likes of Marvin Harrison, Jeremiah Smith, Chris Olave, all those guys, and still being able to produce, Garrett Wilson, like, that's an insane amount of pressure just in general. And he still, like you said, produced well over expectation in my book. So I'd be buying as much Egbuka as I can and probably be selling Godwin, unless, like Matt said, you're in that situation where you're competing. You've got a 1 or 2 year window where you're like, okay, I think he's going to bounce back from this injury and be old Chris Godwin. That's probably where I would hold him.
Yeah. I mean, he scored 113 fantasy points in just 7 games. So he was really productive. And I mean, I think we just need to step back and understand that Ibuka's runway is probably just delayed a little bit for year 1. We need to temper expectations. But even this year for Godwin, this offense is just loaded with pass catchers. I mean, we didn't even mention the running backs. They've got Bucky Irving and Rashad White, who both catch the ball very, very well. Not to mention Cade Otton's a very, very solid tight end, and he had a great year last year. So there's a lot to go around. This Bucs offense throws the ball a lot more than other teams, so I think this is kind of where they share the load, spread the wealth. So I think Godwin can have a good year, but I would not bank on him to have a top 12 year or anything like that. He's certainly got the talent to do it, but I just think this situation with this Bucs offense doesn't necessarily give that a high probability. So for me, for Tyler, we're going to be selling Chris Godwin if we can, and try and get some value for us. If we're looking at what you might go get for Chris Godwin, I think you could probably get a mid, maybe an early second, just kind of see what your league mates think. Again, it sucks with the draft capital of Egbuka. Is it his replacement? Is he going to stay in the slot? I don't know. There's a lot of question marks, but Godwin's kind of at that point coming off this dislocated ankle where you probably should be looking to move